All right, our next guest, yes, indeed, don't be afraid of the light that shines within you. This man has got a lot of light shining out of him, there's no question about it, and shining a lot of light on the world in the work that he's doing in the world. All the way from Maryland, Oregon, best-selling author of the book Letting Go. I haven't read that one yet, Guy, but I will. Latest book, of course, we talked about in the last show, The Secret of Your Immortal Self. This man is very busy, very on target, presented over 4,000 self-realization seminars, and, of course, he's done TV up the yin-yang and down the yang-ying. He's been on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, NPR, and lots of those other three-letter networks. Just keep on going down the line. Director of the Life of Learning Foundation, does 4 inner life classes per week, and we're going to get all Guy's information now at the end of our call today. And if that's not enough, this man is also an award-winning composer and has worked and composed music for people such as the lovely and very talented Diana Ross, Jackson 5, Debbie Boone, and many more. Let's sum this guy up. I don't know if I could. All around a spiritual, manly man. How about that? That'll work. Guy, hello, sir.
Hey, Dermot. That's me, a manly man.
A manly man. I'd say you're pretty manly, Guy. I mean, I've listened to a lot of your talks.
Who am I to argue?
That's right, yeah. That's right. All right. Well, Guy, thanks very much. Now, Guy, before we get into the meat and potatoes of our show today, there's something that most of the viewers, the listeners, they want to know. Very important question now.
All right.
Has your golf swing gotten any better since the last time we talked?
You know, everything in life moves in 2 directions at the same time, Dermot. That's a fact. Actually, and if we knew it better, we wouldn't be quite as harsh on ourselves as we are, whether it's trying to master a golf swing or trying to master our own negative states. We are a work of the cosmos that is in really an endless state of preparation, depending on what we're willing to meet in ourselves. So, long answer to a short question, yes, it's getting better, and whenever something gets better, there's always something more to see about where it isn't, you know? That's the nature of things.
So now, Guy, would you say now you're a half full type of guy? Do you consciously work on like keeping your thoughts positive? You know the way they say positive thinking is all about positive thinking. How do you see that now?
No, I don't. No, look, Dermot, the whole problem is what. Perhaps we've never thought about it, but maybe this would be a good place to start. Why do I have to think about any moment in my life? Did it not just unfold in me? Why do I have to have an attitude? Either the moment revealed something that was positive, powerful, uplifting, transformative, or the moment revealed something that was moving in the opposite direction. If it's moving in the other direction, I don't have to tell myself, gee, that's no good for me. I can feel its limitation. I experience directly the darkness of it. And in that experience of that darkness within myself, there could be no way for me to know it if there weren't a light within myself showing that. And the light doesn't think to itself, gee, what do I do with darkness? What do I do with limitation, inadequacy? The light, by its very nature, acts upon that limitation to transform it, to release you from the identification with it. So that whole business of, optimist, pessimist, all of that belongs to a level of ourselves that doesn't know how to actually be alive yet.
And Guy, when you're talking about the light now, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about God? Are we talking about something, soul? What are we talking about?
We're talking about an order of our own being that has its root in something that is celestial and timeless. And what you want to call it or anybody else wants to call it, that's your business. we've got enough to fight about. What we need to do is agree that within us lives what we can call conscience, something that knows right from wrong without having to think about it, that isn't a moral judgment, not some precept of a religion, but a direct intuition as to what the nature of an action or thought or feeling is. And in that direct intuition, in that direct relationship, to know whether or not this is something we give ourselves to, or whether we give it to the light that shows it as being what it is, and then we're done. It's not our job, Dermot, to change ourselves. It's our job to be responsible enough to see that change is needed, and that the only real change that we can encounter, go through, is by bringing what needs to be changed into the presence of something with the power to do it. And we do not have the power to change ourselves. We have the power to punish ourselves.
That's for sure. So, Guy, then what about all the self-help books, all the self-help workshops? If we don't have the power to change ourselves, then why even bother doing any kind of spiritual work?
Well, because we don't really reach the point of understanding what it means to let go, to authentically surrender ourselves until we have expired every last path. The journey to authentic self-realization is a threefold path. It begins, literally, with false certainty, with the idea that of myself, I am something, even though in every scripture, from Christ to Buddha, East and West, the great masters have said, no, you of yourself are not something. You of yourself can be in relationship with something that does exist, but of yourself you cannot do what you imagine you can, but that's not where we start. We start born into a world where we've been inculcated, conditioned to completely believe that the image we hold of ourselves and of this life somehow or other is the same thing as the fact of it. And so we cling to this image, and when life challenges, which it always does, that image, then we justify ourselves. That takes a long time. So a person starts on the path, Dermot, believing that he or she is something and can do something. But gradually, if we're honest and go through it properly, we begin to realize that, of myself, I can't stop this anger. I can't stop feeling this jealousy, this sense of, gosh, how come that happened to him and not to me? The greed, or just the pure inability to stop an addiction. And then little by little, we move from that false certainty into a new kind of and necessary uncertainty. This is a very important point of initiation, if you want, along the upper path, where before I was sure of myself, that somehow or other my anger proved that I was right. Now I see that anger is something that I'm powerless in the face of. And so not only am I uncertain as to being right, but when I feel the anger, I doubt my own negative state. Never used to doubt my own negative states. They were my conviction, my consolation. So now the aspirant goes through this very definitive stage of beginning to doubt himself. But really, Dermot, what is the person at that point on the path doubting, if not where it is that they had been unconsciously identified with a host of unconscious reactions produced by what? By being conditioned into believing ourselves to be what we're not. So I'm sorry to go on so long here, but then if we live long enough with that uncertainty, where now we don't meet the moment with what we know or believed we did, but rather with a willingness to let the moment, the light of the moment, the revelation of that moment, teach us something about ourselves. Now we're not tormented because life challenges us. Rather, we're constantly brought into a place where we can be changed by the revelation of the need to be a different human being than we've been. So if we go through that kind of uncertainty, which is a difficult stage, we finally come into what is an authentic certainty. Not false certainty, no longer uncertainty, but a new kind of certainty that who and what we are belongs to an order of being that is ceaselessly producing conditions under which we are invited, you know the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, invited to accept the revelation, to release the order of ourself that came into that moment that we've now been shown, and to exit that moment a different order of human being. So in that new certainty, Dermot, fear disappears. Anger no longer has the authority over us because we're no longer fighting with things that challenge an image of ourselves. So sorry to go on so long there, man, but...
No, you're Irish. That's totally... That's totally allowed here, Guy. You're Irishman. You have the ticket to talk as long as you want. I relate to what you're saying, Guy, because I started smoking cigarettes when I was 7, and I smoked all the way up till 47 now. I think till about 39, possibly even 40, and I gave up cigarettes more times than I've had breakfast. And I was constantly trying to give up cigarettes. Oh, this is the month, and this is the month. And, with every piece of will in my body. And then finally,
every self-help book.
Trust me, Guy, everything that was out there, from hypnosis to standing on your head eating a carrot, I did it. And then one night I got down on my knees and I had a bit of a cry because I wasn't able to give up the cigarettes, and I really wanted to. And I said, God, something to the effect of, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I need your help. And it was probably one of the sincerest prayers that I ever had in my life. And God's truth, Guy, I'd say I think I had one more smoke after that, and it was as if, I won't say completely gone, because when I get stressed now, I'll still think of, God, it'd be nice to have a cup of tea and a smoke. But the belly of it was taken away. So I totally understand where you're coming from. I think that's the power, Guy, that... Let's talk about addiction for a moment, because it's a big one out there. And I did a show here, and I was just looking at some addiction stats. 9.3 million, 4% suffer from serious mental health addictions. 4.2 million adults, 18% of the population, talking about America now, suffer from some type of mental health. And 1 in 5 Americans suffer from some type of an addiction associated with or partly of mental health.
Yeah. Dermot, I want to let me say something much stronger. You can find 1 in 100 million human beings who isn't addicted to thinking about himself or herself.
No argument there, Guy.
All the root of addiction, save those, God help us, who's in the womb could not escape his mother's addiction. But apart from that, the addictions that we find ourselves in are all born out of an attempt to find consolation from the emptiness of this existence as we understand it. That's what's so important about what you just said. You reached a point where you understood, I need something I can't give myself. I need something I can't give myself. I don't want it. I wanted it before because I'd have been healthier. I imagined myself healthier. My girlfriend would have said, I can kiss you now because you don't taste like an ashtray. I mean, all the 1,000 things that go with wanting to be free of cigarette smoking, not to mention the cost physically and financially. But at a certain point, a part of you needed to be free.
Yeah,
we have to, as individuals, reach the point, not where we want to be free because we think of ourselves as being more erudite, easier going, nicer to be with, maybe somebody respects me for my wisdom. all that's childish. We need to be free. And until we get past the part of us that satisfies itself with wanting to be free, feeding itself what it needs to for a day, a week, or 10 years, only to find out that the food I took did not produce the need, rather it strengthened the image, then we get somewhere, Dermot. Then we get somewhere. Now I need to be present to myself, because if I'm not, God help me, I'm going to pick up that thought about myself, about being inadequate, about not being equal to others, about my past where I was punished. And when I pick up the pain of that nature, I will pick up what it produces as a pleasure, a way to escape what is my own consciousness, and it can't be done. Not that way.
Yeah, well, the addiction is the pleasure, but it doesn't cause any, it doesn't create any type of happiness. It causes pleasure, maybe, which is quite fleeting, you know.
You know what? Years ago, I wrote this one idea. It just comes to mind when you said it. Is there such thing as a compulsive pleasure? Can a pleasure that's compulsive be a pleasure?
No, because you're trapped by it.
I'm a slave. I have no say in it.
Right.
So, see, that's a contradiction in our consciousness, isn't it, Dermot?
Now that you pointed out, it is, Guy.
Now, what if I could become conscious of that contradiction? Actually aware of the fact that I'm reaching for the cigarette, for the chocolate sundae. I'm reaching for the thought about what my future is going to be like tomorrow when I finally stop being a lazy whatever I am. And instead of looking for a pleasure to escape this sense of self-loathing, I realize that whatever it is in me that's about to pursue this pleasure, it doesn't know what pleasure is. It's a pain looking to hide itself in some other action. And if I could be aware of that contradiction, then I would have to do what? I would begin to need to meet that part of myself that has been lying to me all of these years. Then we're on to something, Dermot.
So how do we, Guy, then... and apologies there on the phone. I thought I turned it off. How do we shine the light on that, Guy? Because it's easy for me to take up the cigarette and look at it and say, oh, gosh, you know, this cigarette now, I know it's hurting me and I know it's doing this and I know why I'm doing it. But that usually doesn't stop me from picking up the cigarette.
Too true. Look, it's funny that the conversation went this way. You know, I speak here in Southern Oregon to a group of students on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, 4 times a week. And tomorrow, in our Sunday meeting, which, by the way, anyone listening is invited to come up. There's nothing to join. It's a $3 donation at the door. No big deal. If you don't have the money, you're not turned away. Tomorrow I'm talking about the very thing we're talking about. And the key lesson, every talk that I give, Dermot, there I write out a particular short idea. In all my books, I use them because it kind of summarizes the whole idea. Here's the key lesson for tomorrow's talk. We rarely see how or when we act against ourselves or others because of how instantly, easily, we agree to identify with a legion of sleep-inducing thoughts and feelings that appear to serve one purpose, and that is to justify a dark and self-defeating level of us for which there can be no justification. Dermot, think about this with me. Be the advocate for the listeners. How many times have all of us fallen into some funk, a rage, a frustration over something that's happened to us in life? You can't count it, can you?
No, couldn't conceive of it. Every day, possibly.
Yeah, every day. I would actually argue that it's multiple times a day. We just don't see it because we are so used to the lower thresholds of that self-torment that we're not conscious of it. It has to reach the boiling point before we were aware of it. But here's the point of my comment. And listeners, by the way, none of this is negative. Everything we're talking about is to bring light into a part of us that we're not aware of. What did Christ say? The light dwelleth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not.
Yeah.
We do not comprehend that there is a part of us that believes suffering over an event is valuable. It never even occurs to us that hating, fearing, loathing, worrying, it never even dawns on us that we're handed a negativity, a dark thought or feeling in an unwanted moment, because when that dark thought or feeling, that suffering comes to us, it comes to us with a legion of thoughts and feelings that are saying why we're right to feel so wrong. What in God's name in us would want to convince us that it is right to destroy ourselves by identifying with dark thoughts and feelings that include hating or blaming others or ourselves? So can you see it, Dermot? We're just asleep.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head, Guy. Right to feel so wrong. I mean, that's really it, isn't it?
Oh, my goodness. But the thing is, you know, when you're in the middle of it, when somebody challenges you or something goes wrong at work, or you make a stupid mistake in front of others, or you miss the mark because you pick up the cigarette when you didn't want to, how many times are we going to believe that attacking ourselves or others is actually a solution to our suffering, when the real suffering is that we're attacking ourselves or others?
So let me ask you this, Guy, because I'm a little unclear. I always thought that the suffering is valuable in the sense that the suffering, you know, you've heard the old thing of pain is the prod to God. So wouldn't the suffering be valuable in that sense, that it would get you to be on your knees?
I'm glad that you bring it up. I'll rephrase it. Unconscious suffering is worse than useless. That's what we've been describing. Unconscious suffering is worse than useless. Conscious suffering, voluntary suffering, begins with realizing that I unconsciously suffer and don't know it. So as I become aware of this tendency on my part to fall down into some fearful, angry state, and then allow myself to justify it, once I begin to recognize, hey, that really doesn't work, then I begin to become conscious of the parts of myself that believe suffering unconsciously is valuable. So I suffer the part of me that unconsciously suffers. That's when change starts, because that's when I start to need real intervention. Because I've remanded my life all of these years over to any thought or feeling that promised me relief from my pain. God does not promise you relief from your pain. God shows you that you're identified with a part of you that's producing the pain. Then he leaves it to your free will to decide whose side do you want to be on.
Oh, that's a key distinction there. Because we you know, the first thing that happens, Guy, is when something, I'll speak for myself, when something terrible in my own life happens, you know, the first thing I think about is why the hell did God let this happen?
Yeah.
You know,
that's
why
exactly
did he do this, you know? I mean, it's a theme that's going on in the world, right? You know, it's like, why is God? The one thing, well, actually, you could answer this one, Guy. You hear it all the time. Oh, The world's gone to hell, and God's doing nothing. And why does God allow so much suffering in the world? What do you say to a lad or lass that says that to you? Which I'm sure you've heard.
Oh, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I simply say that we live in a world presently that's too small. Our consciousness is too small to understand what we're looking at. I'm trying to think of that great author, the roaring of lions, William Blake.
No, I was going to say Yeats. Blake, yeah.
He refers this beautiful passage to the fact that right now we look at life, and all right, this is a little deep. Shall I go into it?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Look, here I am, and I see this. There aren't words for it. I see hell. I see human beings destroying each other, destroying the planet, killing harmless animals. You know, these stories, which don't think for a moment that media doesn't put those up there for the purpose of enlisting an unconscious reaction from the subscribers, the viewers. Why? Because the more I am drawn to unconsciously resist a story, the more I am drawn to the source that's providing it. Because it produces in me a pain I can't reconcile, and therefore a hatred or an anger towards the condition that my mind blames for the pain. So now, and listen to this contradiction, now I hate the people who hate. But I believe my hatred is valid. No hatred is valid. Hatred destroys the hater, period. Why? Because no hatred exists without a mind first defining, imagining, and giving substance to an event. So here I read about something, and the first thing my mind does is it formulates a very distinct image of the condition the event represents. Mm-hmm. But am I actually looking at the condition of the event, Dermot, or am I looking at the content of my own mind that has fashioned that image? Which am I really looking at?
Well, you're looking at it through the lens of your own mind. Everything.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm looking at the object that my mind has made from the content of itself. And the object my mind has made is filled with hatred, filled with violence. And then my mind, asleep to itself, reacts to the image it has made. And it begins to resist the image of hatred that it itself produced. As it resists the hatred that it has now produced, it identifies with this process and believes itself to be righteous when it is nothing but a mind asleep to itself, further seeding hatred, further seeding violence into the whole of humanity's consciousness, which can do nothing other than bring about the next incarnation of this consciousness as it will act against itself. And the last thing I'll add, I know I went deep, but I have to say it. And every time that our consciousness acts against itself, it produces the pain that it blames as being outside of itself. And there you can see a vicious circle, a cycle of reincarnation in which life continually punishes itself in an attempt to escape the pain it produces for itself.
Guy, will you give us an example of that either in yourself or in the world?
Sure.
Of that playing out in the world.
I am in relationship with somebody, and I find out that this person has lied to me. Now, is telling a lie ever good or bad? Lie's never good. So now I'm upset with the person who lied to me. And by the way, I'm not saying that you condone the lie. I'm simply saying that when you see a situation in which someone has lied to you, betrayed you, do you not judge the person? Is not your action towards that person or that condition overseas or in your own neighborhood, is not the way in which you see the person a result of a reaction you've had to them?
Absolutely. I mean, we see them, we identify them in some way as being, wrong.
So I summarily judge them, do I not?
Absolutely.
Now, am I judging the event, the person, or am I secretly judging myself? Because when I'm busy judging that person, is the content of myself that has put together that image. This is why Christ said, "Judge not that ye be not judged. Mm-hmm. Resist not evil. Do not oppose what opposes you." Because without understanding it, Dermot, when I lash out at someone for hurting me, what I'm experiencing in that moment is the pain of not wanting to be in a situation where suddenly I'm filled with negativity. Did the person who hurt me put the pain in me, Dermot, or did they reveal a level of consciousness that in its dependency upon that person, that image, already held that pain, and now the condition has just revealed the consciousness? It didn't produce the consciousness, it revealed it. Can you see that?
Yeah. I'll give you the Irish version of that guy. They pressed one of me buttons.
Yeah. So
the buttons
can I have a button? Can you press a button I don't have?
No.
Which is why Christ said, "Love your enemies." Because your enemy, in quotes, is simply showing you that you're a walking push button. Which is why we learn to thank our enemies, those events, those people, those situations. Because without them, there would be no teacher to reveal to us the lessons we need to transcend that level of ourself.
Right, so let's get down to a bit of nuts and bolts around that guy, because I understand where you're coming from. Judge not, lest ye be judged, and don't point the finger because there's three pointing back at you, and so on and so on. But there's the but, right? That's for all the listeners out there. I'm mirroring the listeners, and of course myself. So someone pushes a button and we get peed off. So what then, Guy? How do we? Let me see how I can phrase this. What do we do with our anger that we can
Dermot,
shed some light on
Dermot,
the why?
Remember I said false certainty, uncertainty, real certainty? Most of us have no real inner life.
Life or light?
Life.
Life.
The inner life isn't the 5 minutes of grace that follow a meditation. The inner life is not feeling graced by the presence of a giant redwood tree while you walk through the forest. Those are momentary tastes of a possibility, but a possibility that can never truly flower in the fullness of understanding the holiness of life, regardless of what it brings, unless in the moment we don't want, we are present to the part of us that hates. We automatically resist anyone, anything that rubs us wrong.
Well, that's for sure.
Resistance appears mechanically. There's no you, there's no me that consciously hates, that consciously agrees to suffer because someone has slighted us. To have an inner life, Dermot, means I understand. In the moment I don't want, I must be present to both the condition that my mind blames for my pain, and I must be aware of the nature in myself that is pained by what it is pointing to. Because if I'm not conscious of my own interior life, that is in fact usually hidden from me by its ability to blame conditions for my conflict, then I'll never know that the conflict I'm blaming begins and has its source in me. That's how we die to ourselves, Dermot.
Right.
By having an interior life that practices the presence in the moment of any pain, any broken promise, any confrontation, so that the light of that revelation, and that's what an event is. Events are revelations, that when the moment comes down, I'm sitting there being watchful of what is being stirred in me and not just looking at what that part of me is pointing at as being the cause of my pain. That's what we're talking about, Dermot.
Right. So what are some questions, or if this might be redundant, but what are some questions, Guy, we would ask ourselves when we're in that unconscious state, or when anger arises, or when we're going for the smoke or sex or whatever it might be?
You know what? There's a whole section right on this very topic in my book, The Secret of Letting Go. I wish I had it in front of me, but I'll bring up a few ideas real quickly here. So usually the first thing that happens when an unwanted moment comes is we always say, why did this happen to me?
Yeah, so
right?
True. So true.
Right? So here's the new question. What is it in me that believes suffering over this event is valuable?
So what is it in me
that believes suffering over this event is valuable? We just agreed suffering over an event is useless.
Right.
Who cries over spilt milk? You can't change what happened by hating it. You can't change a person who's cruel to you by being cruel back. We change the world we experience by awakening to the level of ourself that experiences it. Until we can enter into the world that produces this experience but hides the way it does it by blaming the conditions outside of us, we can do nothing but fight to control events and people, which is useless. So instead of asking, why did this just happen to me? We're going to ask, of what possible purpose is me going into pain over this? Instead of asking, why are you like you are? You know that question?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? Right? The guy cuts you off on the freeway. What kind of idiot are you? The new question will be, what kind of idiot am I to get upset over a mechanical man doing a mechanical action? He has no choice in cutting you off. He is as asleep as you are. Two wrongs don't make a right. So I see, you know what? He did me wrong. I'm not going to answer it with another wrong act. I'm going to answer it with the only rightness I know, which is to question the part of me that wants to do wrong to someone who did me wrong.
So, Guy, what are the topics that I wanted to bring up today? And maybe we can keep this question. And how does it apply to as men? And we'll hold that question because it may be applicable in this next question I'm going to ask you. As men, we're thinking about sex, and you know what's going to come in there, all day long, at least 23 hours out of the 24 hours. And I'm wondering, for us men, how does that question, because we're in relationships, not just with our women, but we're in relationships with everybody. But we have this, I don't want to say addiction to sex, but we're bombarded with sex this, sex that, everywhere. I mean, it's, sex sells, as they say. How do we as men, let me formulate this question here.
I think I have your question.
Yeah, go for it. Let's check in with you.
You can tell me if I don't.
Yeah.
First, probably in the whole of the universe, there is no more powerful energy than sexual energy.
Right. For man or woman, or we're talking men?
I'm talking about for bees.
Right.
For birds, for trees. Everything is the opposites being drawn to each other for the purpose of something new being created. The nature of desire itself, to merge. In human beings, this is experienced as a constant, well, in nature too. Where I live, I'm so lucky I live on top of a mountain here. I get to watch the deer rut. I get to watch the turkeys fight with each other for the females. That sexual energy in all of nature produces an extreme tension. For humanity, as we presently are, serving only nature in terms of earth, we don't know what to do with that tension. So the only thing we know to do is to seek a release from it.
Right.
Which is what the drive for sexual activity is about, the advent of all this pornography. And it's getting worse because the world is more and more conditioning itself to pursue the easy way, the futile way, to release this energy by a use of it that doesn't transform the nature, but simply makes it further addicted to that action. As a man or a woman works to awaken to themselves, they begin to realize that, for instance, I'm sitting here and, God, I just realized I've got so much to do. How am I ever going to get this done by tomorrow? Left unattended, that man or woman will go eat something, drink something, do something, or their mind will eventually drift towards sex, some form of release from the pressure of those opposites. The opposites being me and what I'm thinking I have to get done. Can you understand that, Dermot?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
I do.
So now tension builds, and as the tension builds, so does some part of me that is connected to the same unconscious nature telling me what to go do or get or eat in order to release the tension. But when we start to understand that the tension between these opposites can never be reconciled by anything that one of those opposites drives us to do. Remember we said there's no such thing as compulsive pleasure? Once that becomes clear to us, instead of unconsciously suffering the regret, the remorse, all of the things that attend these unconscious actions that we're driven to do, including justifying ourselves, once we get past that, then we can begin to consciously be aware of this tension and understand that it serves another purpose in us that the bear, the deer, the lion will never know because it can't be aware of itself. But we can become conscious of this tension and the opposites in us that produce it. And in that, Dermot, we can begin to serve a different order of ourselves where this sexual energy allows a relationship with another order of our own being. Then we can have sex or not. It's natural. Nothing wrong with it. But we have no compulsion to it. We're not its slave. It serves us as naturally as anything would over which we have an authority. So that's the answer to your question, I believe you've asked me.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I would add another question to that, Guy. So let's say I'm sitting at home and all of a sudden I start to, ho, what time is the missus coming home at? Or let's just say you're out. I mean, we're there's women all over the place, and the sexual energy too in the world is quite kind of all over the place. You see a lot of men they have no bones about, turning around and checking out a woman. There's absolutely no discretion there whatsoever. What I'm wondering is, in our question that we were exploring earlier, what would be the question for that? So instead of, the man is getting sexually aroused, or just say, even just unhealthy sex life, the sex is imbalanced. What is the question that we need to ask ourselves in that moment when it might be inappropriate to have sex or outside of the relationship or whatever it is?
Let's be clear about this. Number one, no matter who we are, whatever level of development we may have or may not have attained, we are, each and every one of us, doing the best we can in any given moment. The judgment of ourselves, of our weakness, if that's what we call ourselves, for the appetite we can't control, is actually part of the weakness.
Say that again.
Judging ourselves is part of the weakness, not the path to strength. Because it comes to us from a part of us that first tempts us, and then after we do the act we've been tempted to do, torments us for having done it. But we can't see it, Dermot.
Right.
We're not conscious enough yet. But the more I can become conscious of the temptation, the more I recognize that the temptation is to feed myself something that doesn't answer my true desire, which is to be a whole man, a whole woman, to have my own life, to choose whether or not I look at someone or something. Not to be drawn into lusting after a painting, a car, a person, but to actually be aware of the fact that whatever in me lusts after something does so because there is the pain in the same moment of feeling incomplete. And being aware of this incomplete nature is how we begin the process of completing ourselves through its presence, instead of letting the pain of that presence push us to do and be something that never fulfills us, save for the momentary satisfaction, usually followed by some form of guilt.
So the question then, Guy, is how do we become a whole man, woman?
We have to be... Remember I said we have no inner life, Dermot. I mean, how does anybody come to a need? I need to be awake. How do I come to that need? I need to be there when the revelation comes so that I can see the part of myself I didn't see before. From where comes that need, Dermot?
Don't know.
I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know, Guy.
Yes, you do.
I mean...
Yes, you do.
From pain?
Yes. From pain that I no longer justify. From guilt that I can no longer drink away. from anger that I can no longer believe is strength, from fear that no longer holds the promise of a tomorrow where I'm not afraid. By being present to myself in the moment that these lower, incomplete, unconscious aspects of myself promise me tomorrow I will become something other. I escape the whole path of becoming and awaken to the need to be what I am in spite of what I see in that moment by being what I am. And you can't teach that. I mean, we just spent an hour, a good hour, going into some pretty deep stuff. And either the listeners will have nourished themselves on this, and so the need they have to understand themselves will have been enriched. So that when I start to get angry because a sales call comes from someplace in India selling me something I don't even have a part of, I catch the violence. I don't blame that poor person over there who's doing the only thing he can do to feed his family. I'm not saying it's right. The world's full of corruption. But I don't hate. Instead, I awaken to the part of me that wants to unconsciously drag me into punishing that person, because that person is me. I am that man. I am that woman. The more I see that, the more I consciously agree to suffer what blames itself on everything around me. Then my need to be awake becomes more present. The more present my need, the more I am practicing the presence of that need. And Dermot, that need to be present belongs to the divine itself, which wants us to be changed by the light that is producing that need in us. Then it goes full circle, Dermot. One beautiful, whole, full circle.
Do we have to go through the pain to get there, Guy?
Yes. The way out is through.
I was kind of hoping you would say no.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what everybody hopes.
Yeah.
That's why the world is the way it is.
Yeah.
The path of least resistance.
Yeah. The only way out is in.
That's right. Or through.
We have about 5 minutes, Guy, and I wanted to ask you a personal question. I have a friend that has cancer, and this friend just says, "Oh, I want to get it out." And then I tried to, be the spiritual man that I am, of course, and said, well, there's something deeper going on there, and, there's something that you haven't looked at that's creating this, cancer in your body, and, the kind of
I'm afraid I do.
The New Ager response.
God help us.
What, in your view, causes cancer, Guy?
See, it's too much for 5 minutes, Dermot. On one hand, it could be 1,000 things. I've repressed my anger. Not my anger. I've repressed anger.
Yeah.
I've hated my family. I've regretted my actions. I have had these opposites in me that I have fought with tooth and nail in order to escape myself. That's one side of it. I've eaten poorly. I never exercised. I did everything that I knew I shouldn't have. I smoked, telling myself, don't smoke, man. And here's the evidence. Now I can hate myself for smoking, which exacerbates the condition. All of those things on one hand, and on the other hand, Dermot, it doesn't matter. Because you can't change the past. But you can be present to the nature that is one way or another complicit with the condition. And you can meet the nature that is afraid of the condition. And you can transcend that nature and the condition so that even if you die of the disease, the you that dies is not the same one who contracted it.
Right.
You're free. So it's a very deep question, isn't it, Dermot?
Yeah. I was trying to think in terms of, well, yeah, you can cut the cancer out of you, but that doesn't take care of the cause, whatever that might be for that person.
But see, that's what I'm saying. What if there's another level of understanding, another order of time, where every cause, things that we blame, fear, hate, worry about, exists for the purpose of releasing us from the nature that believes that God can act against us?
So do you believe, Guy, that God only says yes? Have you heard that, that God only says yes?
I don't believe in anything. I see that there's never been a moment in my life that wasn't the seed of a new understanding. I see that whatever comes up to be feared belongs to a nature that cannot be permitted to go on fearing. I see that any jealousy in me belongs to a nature that cannot be made happy even if it got what it's jealous about. That's what I see. And I see that because there is something in me that can see it so that I can begin to die to it. So that in dying to that nature and the moments it resists, I'm released from that nature, Dermot. Then the moment itself has fulfilled its true purpose, which is to help me transcend that part of me that in time believes that all that exists that's worthwhile is what it can think about. Can you see the big picture here with me, Dermot?
Yeah. No, I do.
It's beautiful.
So all is well, Guy.
Yes, Dermot. Now we must have the courage inwardly, the manliness, the womanliness, to go about proving that to ourselves through being present fully to ourselves and everything the moment shows us.
I don't think there's nothing more to say, Guy.
I agree.
There's nothing more to say. I was going to ask you a few little silly questions at the end there, but I'm not going to. I'm going to invite our listeners to percolate, to allow, to listen to this talk many times. My girlfriend, Guy, has listened to our last talk at least 20 times, and she comes home every day and says, I was listening to the Guy thing again. I say, he was saying this, and deeper and deeper and deeper it goes. And I think you're one of those men, Guy, that you're not a how-to guy. You say, well, just do this and this. You get A and B and you get C. It's more of, hey, sit down, reflect, allow, open up, try not to think, connect, dial in. What else would you add to that, Guy, before we let you go?
Only that there is inside of every one of us something that is endless and something that is infinite and something that is loving. But we cannot be in relationship with it and still hold on to these thoughts and feelings that we do about ourselves that want to push away anything that reveals the opposite. We need to stop thinking about ourselves, and if we can't stop, which we can't, then at least to become conscious of the nature of that thinking, of that thinker, so that we can see the futility in it. As we see the futility in the pursuit of thought, the thinker begins to slow down. It will not contradict or go against itself, so the mind wakes up to itself. Apart from that, nothing can change. Our entrance into real life cannot be separated from our departure from the false life. That's all I have to say. Other than, listeners, if you like what we talked about, come visit sometime up here. Go to guyfinley.org, www.guyfinley, guyfinley.org. There's some really nice free gifts right there, nothing really to join. And eat some more. Follow up. Don't be complacent. Don't agree that life holds for you what has hampered you. You can make a change, but you have to start with seeing the need for it. That's it.
Guy, it's always it's such a pleasure to be able to talk with you, chat with you, go deep with you, laugh with you.
Yeah.
And I even feel myself a little bit crying sometimes when I'm talking to you.
Well, we're friends, Dermot. We're friends. You know that. So I re-extend my invitation to you and your lady. Come visit sometime, huh?
We will. Guy,
all right,
thank you so much, and all the best to you.
You too.
Bye-bye.